emergency. Hopefully he'll be coming in the future. So instead, we're just going to have a little bit more of an organic conversation about kind of the concept of civic engagement in general and the idea of building black power and what does black power mean in the context of the white political system. And so, like I said, it's more of an organic conversation. Pillars of the community. This right here where we're at the meeting right now is called the Community Spot. It's a place that was built with the idea of bringing the community and all of its beauty and its diversity and everybody that we see here, bringing them together and helping to build kind of relationships and knowing one another with the understanding actually of building power, right? Because unless you know one another, unless you're supporting one another, unless you have a community, we really don't think that you can establish anything at all, much less any type of powerful movement or political system. We don't really, in our political education classes, we don't have any particular viewpoint, agenda, or ideology, except for shit is complex. Okay, and so when we have these conversations, we're looking for the complexities of it, and we're not here trying to teach what's right or what's wrong. But really, how can we delve into the complexities of issues and the topics that we deal with? The series that we're getting ready, this is actually the first night that we're getting ready to start on, is going to be around the concept of civic engagement in general. As you all know, we have an election coming up in November with a few kind of important choices that people will be making. And so we see this kind of as an opportunity to bring community members together and be able to understand kind of what are the implications to either being involved in that system or deciding not to be involved in that system. How will those play a role on our own personal lives, right? And so the idea kind of civic engagement, let me just ask, so when you hear civic engagement, what do you think about?
Voting, community, voting.
Voting, okay. Community, anybody else?
Protesting.
Protesting. Other people?
Mobilizing the citizens.
Mobilizing citizens. Anybody else? You know, I'm looking at you. It's rough when you're a professor and sitting there.
Organizing.
Organizing. So I had the opportunity to speak at another event that Peyton Gray Futures runs called Lacey the other day on the idea of civic engagement. And I asked them, what is civic engagement to me? And we heard a lot of those things. Typically, I always considered civic engagement voting. I was like, what's civic engagement? It's voting. And based on that, I didn't want anything to do with civic engagement. I thought voting was a waste. I didn't understand its importance. I didn't see any of those types of things. But one of the things that over the last few years that's changed, and I'll talk a little bit about how my concept of what civic engagement means and its importance and how it relates to my own personal life has changed over the years. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But one of the answers stood out to me. There were two answers that I think fit my kind of understanding of what civic engagement is and informed really my understanding of what it was. One of them was putting in work on the front lines. And the other answer was love. And so when the brother said it, he actually interrupted me when I was talking to myself. So I was like, ask me questions anytime you want, and then he interrupted me. So I asked for that. But he thinks that civic engagement really is this. Hey brother, how you doing? And have a seat, there's coffee, there's water.
Coffee?
Yeah, there's coffee right there. Yeah. The revolution will not be run on decaf.
The revolution will be done.
Yeah. It may be live streamed, not today. So where was I? So this idea of civic engagement as an act of love, I think, is really important, because really what civic engagement means is if you see something that you don't like, changing it. That might have to do with you personally, but it might have to do with things that are going to affect other people. When we first started Pillars of the Community, it was an organization that was set up just to work with Muslims that have been incarcerated and helping them kind of get on their feet. So we quickly realized that the issues that they were facing were also being faced in the larger community. And so then how can we address issues of racial profiling and other types of things in the larger community? But still, I didn't have any interest in voting. For me, voting was a waste of time. We're voting and electing people that aren't going to represent me, that aren't going to represent my concerns, and don't even care about me or my concerns. So why would I be at all interested in being involved in them? Plus, what am I going to say on the day of judgment if I'm involved in electing someone that ends up doing, as a moral religious person, if I end up electing someone that's going to end up creating chaos, that's going to be responsible for the murder, that's going to be responsible for incarceration and the slaughter of people in other parts of the world, right? So these were some of the ideas and thoughts that were going through my mind when I was thinking of civic engagement. What I didn't realize is, like the sister was saying, is that's not what civic engagement is. Civic engagement isn't only voting, right? It's being involved and having a love for your community, seeing things that you see that you don't like, that you think should be changed, and doing something to change them. And there's different levels of civic engagement. If you're driving down the street and you see a board with a bunch of nails sticking out of it, lying in the middle of the road, right? And you get over, instead of driving around it, you pull over the side of the road and you take that board and you get it out of the middle of the street, you're being civically engaged. You're doing something for your community because you love your community. You don't want somebody else to come run over that board and pop their tires, right? Some people might not see that. Some people might say, they might be driving their car, they go around and they're going to keep on going. Why? Because I don't want to pull over, it's going to take my time, I'm on my way to work, I'm on my way to do this, and I'm on my way to do that. So they don't have that same love that that person who decides to pull over, right, has for the community. And so you make a choice not to be civically engaged. And so when we're working in the community and we're seeing different types of things, and you see somebody, or you personally are pulled over by the police and you're hassled by the police, and that makes you upset, one thing you can do is just be upset. You can go home. Or, that's basically what's that doing? That's swerving to avoid running over the nails. I'm going to swerve, but I'm not going to do anything to change it. But if you go home and you're like, I'm going to file a complaint because I want to make sure that they know that this police officer is causing these problems so that they don't continue to cause those problems for somebody else, then you're becoming civically engaged on the next level. But then when you're at the barber shop and when you're talking to your friends and you're speaking with people who you know and you're hearing that they're getting pulled over also, they're getting hassled, they're being issued citations, right? And you say, hey, you know what, I need to do something to stop this from happening to everybody around me, that's also civic engagement, right? And then the more you learn and the more that you see the things that you don't like, you want to start to ask yourself, what's the best way for me to address this problem? If it's a systemic problem, if it's a local problem, it's an individual problem, what do I need to do? What is my responsibility to be able to change it? So again, going back to my original views as far as voting, I wasn't like an anti-voter, right? But if I was walking along campus, this is just a few years ago as a professor, and they're like, can you sign this? Are you registered to vote? I said, no, I don't believe in the political voting system. Right now at Pillars, we have people registering to vote. And they know people are assholes. I was one of those assholes, right? I didn't think I was an asshole. I was like, I'm leaving. They ain't even ready for me. I don't believe in the political system. I'm not electing somebody. And this poor dude, they're just trying to get paid $2 for a signature or something like that. And I'm getting ready to give them my Malcolm X speech, right? But then, as I began to get involved in the larger kind of concept of civic engagement and work with other organizations, I got invited to an event that the ACLU put on in Sacramento. That was around incarceration. I think I actually went with Ray, the lobby there. We went up there and I'm like, look, they're talking about the same issues that we're talking about. They're talking about the issues that we care, but I don't see too many of us that are sitting at the table here. But it was fascinating to me that these conversations were happening in different pockets of the world, of the state. And what can we then do to work with them in order to be able to change it? At that same time, there was a proposition called Prop 47. You guys know, who remembers Prop 47? Brother Malcolm. What is Prop 47?
Prop 47, it made certain crimes that were once felonies, it turned into misdemeanors. So like,
Baby on
theft, To
Hey, by the way, sorry. He said he wasn't giving up the girl. He's back.
He didn't want to be rude, so you like, hey, okay.
Yeah, so like theft of a certain amount of money went from like grand larceny felonies to lower level. Stealing a firearm, you know, they can charge for a felony, they lowered that. Certain drug possessions, you know, that were giving people a lot of time, they turned into felonies, so a lot of people came home early because of that deal, that proposition.
Right, so essentially what it is it took something, crimes called, that were wobblers, right? That the prosecution, that the district attorney can decide whether to charge that person with as a felony or as a misdemeanor. And so when you had Malcolm and Darwin walking around Southeast San Diego and they got pulled over for marijuana charges, for carrying marijuana, and then you got Todd and Hank at San Diego State who got pulled over for walking around with marijuana, right? Who do you think was charged with the felony? People of color. Darwin's gone, right? Got slapped with the felony, right? Malcolm, blam, slapped with the felony. So the proposition didn't change some of the archaic drug laws. It didn't attack the system directly as much as it could have. But what was heavy for me is that was the first time that that's actually the first time that I voted. I might have voted when I first turned 18 because my mom threatened me.
Right.
But since 18, that was the first year that I ever voted, and that was the only thing I voted for. I went through it. I just said, you know what? I'll circle this right here. Yes, I'm Prop 47. That's it. I'm done. Right? I don't want to have anything to do with it. And I still had doubts about the impact that this proposition had on the people who I cared about. Right? Predominantly black and brown people in the prisons. But then I had the opportunity to work with a brother, Aaron Harvey, who was locked up when Prop 47 passed. And he said when they were locked up, he said the jail was overcrowded. You had people in bunks and people sleeping on cots and people sleeping on the grounds. He said the day after, or within the first couple of days of Prop 47 being passed, the jail's empty. Because it was retroactive, right? So there's a couple of things I want us to think about, right? Because everything has, in a capitalist system, has something to do with capital. And when you don't have people in bunks and people filling up the jails, that's a loss of resources. And when people who are used to receiving money and having resources start to lose their money, they're not usually like, oh well, that was a bummer, right? Michelle Alexander talks about the cyclical nature of oppression on black people. And how as soon as we attack one issue or one system and make it a little bit better, you can't go to sleep. Because they're going to try to figure out another way to reuse that system. I just heard a report on NPR yesterday, and they were interviewing people who had been detained after crossing the border into the United States. And they were interviewing lawyers and judges and everything like that. And they started talking at the State Department now, you have all of these jails and these prisons in Texas and these places that are empty now because of some of the reform laws that have passed. And as a result, they're figuring out how can we now send this dude who crossed the border with his family to try to fight for his family, how can we send them to prisons? And hey, we can make a little extra money if we send their families with them too, right? So thinking about how money works in this system is important too. So that was the first check that I was like, oh man, you know what, I'm glad that I voted for that. I'm glad that I was in the streets, and that's when we kind of rekindled the Reclaiming the Community movement, where we were meeting and encouraging people and teaching them about Prop 47. The second thing actually happened with another brother who was facing time in a federal court. And I don't remember what the charges were, but they were linked to the 33 African-American men that were locked up and rounded up under 182.5, which is a penal code that got put into place, how? From Prop 21. How did Prop 21 get passed? Either people voted for it, it got passed two ways. People voted for it, and some people didn't vote at all. And it was passed. That was in 2000? It was in 2000. Prop 21 passes, not until 2016 or 2015, I don't remember exactly, was it, that Bonnie Dumanis, an elected official, the most powerful elected official, is the district attorney, decided to round up 33 African-American men who were allegedly from a gang that had allegedly committed 9 shootings. Only one person was actually shot during those 9 shootings, and the person who committed the shootings was never found. And so in court, she came and she said, in court, this elected official, who was elected by us, whether through voting or not voting, said in court, we don't think they committed the crime. We don't even think they knew about the crime. But under Penal Code 182.5, which was passed by California voters, we can charge them with these shootings. And they charged them 50 years to life and set the bail at over $1 million. A few of them with the community being involved, being civically engaged because of the community, because of love for the people who were being impacted and for the people who would continue to be impacted. There was civic engagement that happened that began to challenge those laws. That 182.5, 33 African-American black men be able to challenge it. Some of them were eventually the case was dropped. But many of them had already pled. Some of them are spending up to 23 years in prison right now for this charge 182.5 that was implemented by an elected official that was using a proposition that had a penal code in it, an obscure penal code that nobody had ever used it before, right? Most people hadn't even read it, but they voted for it, right? In order to lock up 33 African American men. Okay? So back to the story of the brother that was facing time in the federal court now. In the federal court, he's standing before the judge. And this brother, his name is Alonzo Harvey, he had been working at Pillars and he had been doing door knocking and civic engagement work and stuff on different issues, right? His lawyer gets up and he says, look, this person, he's not a criminal. These are the charges. He served time for it. He did this and everything. This person is working in the community. He's doing positive things. He's encouraging other people in the community to go to school, to be engaged, and to create a better community for themselves. What is he showing again? Love. What is he doing by showing that love in the community? Civic engagement. Goes into this whole story, blah, blah, blah. Then the DA's representative stands up and say, yeah, this person might be doing good now. We're not going to question any of that. But that doesn't take away from the harm of the people that he targeted and that she didn't say who those people were. People that he targeted and the destruction that he's created in the Lincoln Park community area. And so please give him, I can't remember how many ridiculous amount of years it was for this. Then the judge, right? Actually, before the judge said, then the district attorney, his defense lawyer, he had the opportunity to stand up. And you know how they tell you that court isn't anything like the movie Law, like the programs Law and Order and all those other things? I think that's usually true, but I don't think this lawyer knew it, right? Because this lawyer gave him, and he gave this speech, and he was saying, you know, he's done this and he's done that. And then the district attorney claims that he has destroyed the community, right? And he's like facing, his back is facing us, he's talking to the judge. And he says, what community is he talking about? This community? And I was like, oh, sure, right? That is the cheesiest shit I ever heard, right? And I was like, they sending him away, right? That person locked up. I was like, oh no. Then the judge gets up, and the judge gives a good 5 to 10 minute lecture, essentially to the prosecution, but also to everybody sitting there, saying that she would be remiss if she was to take somebody from a community that has been starved of economic funds, of programs for kids, of community development, of all of these things. And if she were to take someone that's doing good there and doing positive there, someone that loved and was civically engaged with the community, and put them in prison, then she would be the criminal. This is the judge saying that. Why does that matter in this larger conversation that I'm having about civic engagement and voting? Why does what this judge decided, why does that matter? How do federal judges get their positions? They're appointed. Who are they appointed by? This is why we have political education classes. Who are federal judges appointed by? The president. I'm not a big fan of Obama, okay? I'd love to have coffee with him. I'd love to have tea with him, play basketball. He seems like a really cool good dude, okay? But it's hard for me to disassociate all of the negative things that have happened for any president who's in that position, that he was there. So I've never been a huge fan of Obama. But he's the one who appointed that judge. Presidents have the power to appoint federal judges. And I know, without a doubt, that if our president right now was the person who had appointed that federal judge, that brother wouldn't be free. That brother wouldn't be out here working on transferring to a four-year university. He wouldn't be out here working in the streets trying to encourage other people to love their community, but also to give back. So all of a sudden, I say all of that for a number of reasons. The lecture of the class today was supposed to be around black power in a white political system. And I don't think it's possible for us to talk about black power without talking about what is power. And there's a lot of people, Layla and Christina, and amazing people that are here as part of this conversation that can give you a really good definition. But what I understand is power is being able to do what you want to be able to do, when you want to be able to do it. We're not even at that level. We just want to have the power to prevent people from doing what they want to do to us whenever they want to do it. If it wasn't for the community that had stood up and started showing up at the courts and flexing their power and being civically engaged, those people whose trial was thrown out, Aaron Harvey, Brandon Duncan, DeAndre Cooper, all of these other brothers who were actually gotten out never would have gotten out. That was power, right? If people hadn't gotten together and passed Proposition 47, all of the people who had those low-level minor offenses wouldn't have gotten out. They would still be spending time today, and people would still be being incarcerated for really low-level drug and petty theft charges. That was power. But it's also important to recognize that just getting propositions passed, just getting people elected isn't enough, right? I'm not talking as a person from Pillars of the Community right now. I'm talking as an individual. When in our last large District 4 election, where Myrtle Poe was elected, she was supported by the community, right? The community is the one that elected her, along with others. But because we didn't have the power to hold her responsible, all we got out of it was a Walgreens, according to her. That's something that she's very proud about. If you don't believe me, you could look up her interview in the San Diego Union Tribune.
With the liquor license.
And listen with the liquor license. Well, there we go. We needed more liquor.
Not enough.
Yeah. We got a Walgreens and a few sidewalks. But we also had somebody who said that the reason why black people are racially profiled in this country, in this country, as well as in her district, is because black people are the ones committing the crime. Who do you want them to pull over? White people? Right? So having somebody who has the audacity to say they represent you, be bold enough to make statements like that, shows what? A lack of power. That's a lack of power on our part. That's not her fault. That's our fault. How can we allow for someone to do something like this? Right? So this concept, and again, like I said, Pillars of the Community doesn't have called Layla out right when I was getting ready to call Layla up. So
They don't care, the community's like, just come outside, leave your business.
hey, yeah, drive through, better than a drive by.
Yeah.
it's our fault. Why? Because we haven't fully came to the understanding of how to grab power for ourselves, be able to make our own decisions and do what we want to do when we want to do them. We haven't gotten enough power to be able to act upon the things that we love, right? And we haven't done it in a strategic way. We have glimpses of it. We have glimpses of it. You have big wins that happened with the so-called Emancipation Proclamation. That wasn't a bad thing. It was a good thing. But that wasn't enough. We had other wins in the Civil Rights Movement. But it wasn't enough. Why? Because what Michelle Alexander talked about? This shit is cyclical. As soon as you begin to say, hallelujah, we're cool, they're going to come back at you. And part of the reason is because we don't understand that this system, right, is complex. What did I say? We don't have an ideology that we talk about in these political education classes, but what do we talk about? If anything, shit is complex. And so the reason why we're here tonight is to begin to understand, in the next series that's going to be going on for the next few months, every Friday, is going to be digging into the complexities of civic engagement, digging into the complexities of the electoral system, digging into the complexities of when you see something wrong that you don't like, how are you going to change it? And we're not an organization that goes out and preaches that you have to vote because people died for your right to vote, even though that's true. People did die for your right to vote. But what we learned with Prop 47 is if you give us something to vote for, we'll vote for it. What we didn't know is you can create that stuff. You can create things to vote for. You can create candidates that you care about, and you can hold them accountable. We're not those people, these political, actually maybe some of our speakers will talk about this, but that's why, because we're understanding the complexities of civic engagement, right? But Pillars of the Community isn't an organization that says if you don't vote, you can't complain. What are you talking about? Why in the world can't you complain? Those are your elected officials. They represent you, right? If your mom does something to you that you don't like, you can complain. It might not go anywhere. You didn't vote for her, right? You didn't vote for your mom. You didn't vote for your dad. That's who they are. You are their responsibility. Our elected officials, right? We are their responsibilities. They represent us. So we're not here to say, hey, you need to play the game. We're here to say, don't get played. Understand what they're talking about. Understand what's on the ballot. Don't just vote to vote. Understand what's on it. And then vote for what you think is important. Understand who's on it. And then vote for who you think is going to represent you. But then more importantly, make sure that once they're elected, once they're in those positions, once those propositions are passed, that you don't just go right back home. You have to make sure that they implement them. Prop 47 passed, got a lot of people out of jail, got a lot of people out of prison. But you know where the majority of that money goes right now? I don't know if I want to say majority, because I don't have the numbers and somebody's going to say, hey, it goes to the district attorney. The person who did it, who fought. The person who sent a representative to Black Men United to say, don't support this bill. Don't support Prop 47. When Prop 47 was getting passed, the person that they sent to talk about Prop 47 and give information came to Black Men United. Right? I'm going to stop that part of the conversation right now, because we love all of our brothers and everybody who's out there doing positive things and everything like that. The point is, right, is we have to hold our leadership accountable, we have to hold our elected officials accountable, we have to hold everybody accountable, right? And that money that was supposed to go to the community now is going to the district attorney. It's going to law enforcement, right? Now the people who get paid to lock you up are getting money to create programs, supposedly, that keep you from being incarcerated. How does that make any sense? Right? That's like giving an ice cream man money to, say what?
To keep you skinny.
To keep you skinny. That ain't the ice cream man's job. They want you to be fat and happy. Right? So to talk a little bit more about some of the work that's been going on in the community around this issue, the issue of Black Power and what does Black Power mean for us and how we can be engaged in that. The sister I have a ton of respect for, an amazing pillar of the community, Sister Layla Aziz.
What did we say power was? What's power? Y'all came here because y'all said something that said Black Power, right? What brought you here? What is that? What is that to you?
Power, true power is not implementing on a group of people what they deserve, even though you have the ability to do so. Withholding and refraining from unleashing your full fury,
I love you.
even though you have the ability to do so,
All right.
and the reason to do so.
And the reason to do so. Darwin, what you think? What is power?
Power is who gets what, when, where, and how.
Professor, what is Black Power? Adisa. Professor Adisa. I like the African name. Can I call you by that? Oh, good. I didn't know if that was your favorite name. I always call you that by name. What is Black Power to you? Black Power.
The ability to act in self-determination.
Self-determination. What do we call that? Uchichagulia? Sir, what is Black Power?
I think Black Power is the ability to use Black economics and white economics in a way that fosters further development, where we start to break cycles of dysfunction and we move forward in a way where our children reap the benefits and not go back being driving Cadillacs.
Right. Everybody, what's Black Power to you?
Like he said earlier, it's kind of like when you are like when you want to do it, when you want to do it, do what you want to do.
Like self-determination, ability. What's Black Power to you?
Yeah.
Oh, took it. Took it. Victor, what's Black Power to you?
Being able to make decisions with with Black people in mind.
I have never once, and somebody else might, because it's our definition, and collectively we have had some determination in that definition through our elders, but I've never heard Black Power mean the suppression of any other individual. That's one of the most beautiful things about Black Power. We're saying, get your foot off our necks now, right? We have the ability economically, culturally, right? Family-wise, educationally, to do what we need to do as a people. And we have still our ancestors and our elders that are guiding that path, right? So any time I do anything, I try to channel my ancestors and my elders, because I already know I'm not going to do anything they didn't do, right? So when I'm going to battle to try to get a vote from disenfranchised people, I know that Fannie Mae Lou SNCC with Stokely Carmichael, that was done, right? So then I try to look. I don't think my people were kings and queens in Africa. I think they had a farm farm, they knew how to feed people, they worked collectively, we grew yams, right? And that's royal in itself, that's just my personal thing. So on the ground, I try to see how we would do that. I believe I came from a family of warriors though, because every tribe had warriors in order to protect itself. So that's ingrained. So one of my warriors who I look at anytime I'm plotting strategy is Hannibal, right? And the reason I look at Hannibal, I know. The reason I look at Hannibal is because of what he did here in the Second Punic War, right? So now I have an issue. Voter disenfranchisement is my issue. The fact that after slavery, they, Cicelo, like Khalid said, saw a way, and one of those ways was taking the vote from free Black people, right? And now we have this criminal class that's a slave class that still exists today. So how do I confront that criminal class and go at the powers that be to reach in there and seize Black power, right? How do we do that? First of all, we have an obstacle, so that's a battle, right? So if my elder taught me right, some of y'all professors know this better than me, but he taught me this is wrong, because we ain't wrong, ain't we? Ain't this battle, ain't this wrong? Our people still, we we have to understand that there's more technology, right? But the tactics can still be the same, right? So if I know this is wrong, and this is the way they line up their forces in a line, right? My ancestor Hannibal told me to line my forces up here, who are gonna come this way, and it's called a flank, and send my cavalry out here. Because in this battle, what Hannibal did was, he circled the Romans and he slaughtered them. And 40,000 Romans died that day. And he didn't suffer any casualties, he understood their weaknesses, right? So now I got a sheriff, because myself and Aisha and Sarah, when we sat with him, and we were very nice, and we smiled, and we asked, can we please come in and register voters? Because we know if you have a population of 5,400, and I know that 20% of that population are African American, and 36% of that population are Hispanic or Latino, I know right here I got some power I can go seize, right? And the sheriff told me, nobody the hell is you coming up in here. You will never get to come up in here. So we started an email war. But now I gotta sit there, how do I flank this dude? Because he has the power and he ain't letting me in. So how do I flank this dude? So what we did, coming, Aisha, myself, and Sarah strategizing together, we knew their system because we know people in jail and we email them, right? When you're from a community, you know the weaknesses. But also we know how to run Public Records Request Act to make these white folks give us what we want. By law, send it to their legal department. We got a list of every single person in jail. Sarah went on and recruited all these volunteers, and we emailed every single inmate in California, in San Diego jails, and told them their right to go, and told them the sheriff won't let us in. That is what you call a flank. They have the highest number of registered voters in the San Diego County Jail in its history. The flank was created, though, by Dr. Shirley Weber. Because prisoners can't vote in the state of California. We're working on it. It's going to be a little harder, but we're working on it. But in the county jail, you could. But when it's called Brown versus Plata, I believe, when a gentleman sued and the Supreme Court said California has to decrease their overcrowding in prisons, they passed a bill called AB 109, realignment, where they shifted people from the prison to the jail, and the so-called allies and unallies said they can't vote because they should have been in prison. And they tried to use a loophole to disenfranchise them. Shirley Weber said, okay, wrote a bill, made it very clear. So about 95% of people in county jail are eligible and can legally vote. So we had another issue. We still need to get in because we need to do a cold flag. And we got one covered, right? But how are we going to get in there? We went to the League of Women Voters and we told them what happened, and they sat down. They said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to meet with the sheriff, and I'm going to ask them to let us in. The League of Women Voters are white women who've been registering people since prohibition, not prohibition, white women. Suffrage, right? And they have that name, that historical value, right? And they do have white privilege. So they went and the same day they sat with the sheriff, he told me, hell to the nah. He told them, yes, you can come in tomorrow, okay? So we have people coming in there. We have volunteers starting October 1st. And there'll be Pillars volunteers, RTC volunteers that go in with the RTC. So now look, like Hannibal said, we got them here, we got the emails. We got them here because we're starting to surround them, but this is your most important one right here. This is the cavalry that the horses come out right here because you got to circle your enemy in order to suck the life out of it, right? Suck the life out of white power. How do you do that? We have inside organizers. So we're going to have people that are actually in custody who are going to be doing the civic engagement in there. That's the horses. That's the spook who sent by the door, right? And that's how we're trying to build power. That's a small battle though. That battle was one battle, right? So we have other battles because we also want parolees to be able to vote. What does this mean if we have 500 votes? I did the estimates, about 500 votes just from D4 here. What does that mean in a tight race? How many votes did our D4 candidates? What was the difference in their votes last primary? 6 votes. 6 votes. Wow. Within that organizational structure, there has to be organizing power, organizing demands, showing people how to come together. Black and brown people coming together over cross issues and working together. Hannibal's army was diverse. He had Nubians, he had Phoenicians, he had Gauls. He led that army, but they had one thing in common. The enemy of my enemy is my what? right? So those are the strategic mechanisms that we're trying to use as far as black power and seizing black power and understanding black power does not mimic white power.
So
It is not oppressive, yes.
Did the people who were getting them to vote today encourage them to vote in any particular way or for any particular candidate?
No, you don't do that. What you do is you educate people because it's not on me to tell them who to vote for. By law, I can't tell them who to vote for, but even if I could, why would I do that? Why would I not empower people to think for themselves? Because what I'm thinking is going to happen is you're going to have a radical run at some point. At some point, somewhere, when this power is built, you're going to have somebody step on the stage and say something that nobody wants them to say. The powers that be. And that's what we're building to, for the people to have that self-determination. In order to do that, we have to organize, we have to build power, and we have to give people the leadership development that they need to be autonomous, and then we have to be willing to even follow them. Right? Because we're talking about in custody or prison organizing or returning residents organizing, the people who have experienced that pain, that humiliation, that slavery, should be the ones who are at the forefront of that movement, and it's our job to make sure they are. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Any questions?
Aye.
Black power.
I do, but I'll hold them for you and I later.
Okay, sir. You almost share with everybody. You see where you got a lot to say.
I'm a little bit on a different level. I'm more ingrained with, Senator King and bill reform.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk.
I have a brand new company, so the mine,
You have a bill on something?
no, how would I keep a bill company? They're going out of business.
That part.
I have a concierge service for incarcerated inmates.
That's what's up.
Yeah, it's the first one California's ever had, and I haven't had as many problems with the sheriff because I used to be the vice president of National Action Network for Shane.
Yes.
So I've met the sheriff a couple of times, and I'm actually trying to hire Richard Miller, the last undersheriff, right now.
Yes. How's Rick doing?
He's doing just fine. He's doing fine.
He was supposed to be the one who got sin when he had to go. That's what messed us up.
Well, it wasn't so much that, is that his plan, he didn't have a plan to run against the sheriff, but they wanted to make sure he didn't.
Okay. Oh,
The conspiracy runs deep in San Diego County. It's a mafia of its own.
yes it is.
Yeah.
Yes it is. Let's talk about bail. Let's talk about power, black power. Let's talk about brown power. Let's talk about bail. Because you brought that up, right? So we all came together and said we don't want to cast bail, right? And we had a good bill. We had two good bills, AB 1 and SB 10 last year. And politics came about and killed both of those bills. Governor Brown killed those bills. We lost that fight there. When we allowed both of those bills, I think it's AB 42 and SB 10 to be killed, last year, we gave our enemy too much time to amend, which they did, right?
Well, I'm not gonna say you're wrong. I'm gonna say it with a sense of naivete.
Okay.
At any time that the legislature decides they're gonna change the whole plan, this is not just happening in California, it's happening all over the United States. So the legislature took that $12 billion business and said, we're kicking you out. It may have been a lack of voters, but the plan was still going to happen no matter what.
Well, the plan that was supposed to happen didn't happen.
Well,
The bill that we had supported as a community went through amendments. And there are tactical points, multi-pronged attacks that you can do before those amendments come about that will diminish or not make those amendments as strong as they were. We lost that battle there when Governor Brown killed it from on top and said he's waiting for the judicial report, which he did. The judicial report
all
came out.
that was intentional.
Me and you agree right
That
now.
was intentional.
I actually had to go to Sacramento to find out if there was amendments in the city charter to stop me from having this conference.
There is no disagreement.
And they basically told me that, there's no policy or procedure, and they're chasing me now, so.
Right. So now we have another fight, right? Because what's gonna happen now is it's no cash bail. What is it now? Somebody tell me.
Risk assessment.
But what is it? What is it? What does that look like?
Well, it looks like that.
It used to be bail out by cash. Now what does it look like?
The judge decides whether or not you are going to be held. I mean, there's like a whole chart that explains, it's like red, yellow, and green. If you're more likely to be a risk to the community, then there's a hearing that you have to go to compared to if you're not as likely, then you, what is it called, like, we'll think about it, you're free. But you're not free, you know what I mean? They'll
Right.
still call you back and then they'll do the whole process again.
Right, right. So for that, right now, we have you either get out or you don't. There's no bail. There's no putting a bail. You either get out or you don't. What is our fear in that? You just kind of documented that, part of our fear, but what is the fear coming about from those procedures that are going to be outlined?
Discriminatory.
Mhm.
We're gonna target black folks and
Yes,
brown
yes.
folks again, and
Yes,
just say that we don't fit this, we don't have a house, we don't have the connections, all those type of things, that the same cycle.
The majority of African Americans already been on parole or probation, so they're already in the first level of the tier.
Right. Who in here has not showed up to court before?
And or failure to
Traffic
pay.
court. Who has, that FTA is going to kick us people?
Or failure to pay.
People who have to go to work and don't have the ability to not go to traffic court are now going to sit in jail because they have an FTA, a failure to appear. Besides poor working class people, who is the plight of San Diego right now, who's going to also be stuck in jail?
Immigrants and Latinos.
Immigrants, possibly, yes. Latinos, they with us anyway, because they're working class and poor right there with us. So we're going to get them together with FTAs, and they're going to say, we're a flight risk. Homeless. Homeless.
They're already there.
Come on, let's talk about that. So right now, we have a homeless issue, because 30% of people that are in county jail are homeless. So instead of building homeless shelters and doing permanent supportive housing, we have decided to invest our county jails to be homeless shelters.
Remember those free beds from Prop 47? You got
Those free beds fill up. Right now, I checked the jail population, right now, we're at 5,500. We're at capacity. So we got crime is down, Prop 47, where you finding all these criminals at? And those are some of the issues that we're having because they're going and they're attacking the homeless, the unsheltered population. They'd rather pay $56 a day, I mean, not $56, $151 a day, $56,000 a year to keep a homeless person incarcerated when it's much cheaper to do it the right way. The average stay in county jail is 200 days. So that's what we're looking at. So then when you talk about a multi-pronged attack, there's another guy like his name is Shotgun Zulu. And he had a bull attack, right? Backs, just make sure nobody else is coming. Fighters, right here for the flag. You're youngsters, you're not your most experienced fighters, but they're gonna go in and they're gonna go hard. That was Shaka Zulu's thing. That's how he took out a lot of colonists when coming into town. How are we doing that? What's that, sir?
It's your population report.
What, 5,500, right? I just looked at it today. Yes, sir. I did my due diligence. I'm trying. It was 5,400 yesterday, so they got 100 more people somehow. Today. Man, moving and grooving up in there. Man, we got people right now. We're not gonna say anything. They don't live around here. You'll never see them around here. They live up north, but they got warrants. And
One of the statistics that people really don't know is the daily rotation. They disguise the daily rotation right now in San Diego County during the week between 250 and 300 people go through the jail system a day. And you're not, the system intake is not one day, it's 72 hours. So the numbers are all just 50.
right.
You know, and then on the weekend, it's anywhere from 500 to 600 people
Which is
a
important.
day go through the system.
Isn't that something? One of the things that we're working on, and I'm gonna give you guys a little bit, is a bail fund. Christina's working on that. She's with us. It's diverse people, mostly people from oppressed communities. So we have the Brown Berets, we have People Over Profit, we have Black Lives Matter, Pillars, we have Redneck Revolt, showing up for racial justice, and we are planning a homeless bailout to demonstrate to the powers that be that the risk assessments are BS. So we're gonna have jail support, we're gonna have community support teams, we're gonna have volunteers, we're gonna have faith-based centers, giving backpacks to give to these people. We're gonna take them to the court, buy them something to eat, and demonstrate that a risk assessment is not how you do it. And to then start looking at policy, because there's a difference between policy and laws. We're gonna have some policy issues on the ground, and we're gonna have some legislative issues to clean up SB 10 in the next year or the next year or two. So those are the different actions that we're taking on the ground, okay? Yes.
I just want to lift up, like, also y'all participatory defense part.
Yes.
It's keeping so many folks, like, so many folks with loved ones with disabilities.
Yes.
Who get criminalized and stuff, it's bringing them home.
Yes.
And just so thankful for that work that y'all are doing.
Thank you. And that's collective too. So collective work is the different organizations. We meet with families on Tuesdays. We have someone going through the criminal justice system from arrest to the end, the conclusion of their court case. We work on, in those attacks that I'm telling you guys about, we attack the court system like that. We attack different motions at preliminary hearings, at further proceedings, at bail hearings. We're attacking. And we're doing that through probation, who does the risk assessments, through the public defender. We got one public defender, she might be fired, but she's on administrative leave right now. We attack that way. We attack through the prosecutor's office. We attack through the judge, and in order to decrease mass incarceration and empower families. So now you have mothers, I'm up here talking, but you have mothers who never knew anything about the court system, who can come up here and tell you all about the court system. And that's the purpose of these things, is building that leadership, that community capacity. Last thing we have is police brutality. That's a fight. That's going to be a strategic fight right there, sir. Earl McNeil today. Can you let us know what the prosecutor did today? You know, yeah, prosecutor. Yeah. What happened?
The district attorney decided not to prosecute the officers. I'm a little shocked and surprised by that. So that summer, Steffens, the district attorney, met with the family and released the video, so the timing was together for both. But we went through this with Alongo, and that really hurt us when that time the district attorney, Dumanis, decide not to prosecute the officers. There was different groups with strategy, and a lot of them actually were expecting Dumanis to prosecute the officers, and they were surprised. They wrote Dumanis a letter, and they met with her personally.
I never expected that.
I know, but
that's unbelievable. I expected exactly what to happen. Why? We have not built the power. We are working on it, but we have not yet built the power to ensure that someone like Summer Stefan or Bonnie Dumanis or anyone else behind them who tries to keep this white power structure in place is afraid to not prosecute a dirty police officer.
But following what you just said, it's really critical for the context for this. Summer just won the election. The Sheriff Borges won the election.
Right.
So they, it's a gut check for us, because their thing is, we've got our position. What are you going to do about it?
And here's where the real gut check comes, and I just want to tell my black and brown brothers and sisters. Our votes don't matter many times to liberals, to white liberals, unless it's helping them. And what did Malcolm X say about how we use our ballot? Like a what? A bullet. So we have to overstand that and stop giving our votes out like cheap tricks. And making sure that the things that matter to us are taken care of. You don't get to tell me I'm going to vote for something you care about, but you're not going to stand with me at the border. You don't get to tell me to hold you down over here, but tell me that a white woman who's not impacted by criminal justice should be the district attorney over a black woman who knows it up and down. You don't get to do that. And that's when the first people in the plan of attack is the people that are coming as allies when they're really enemies, because they're the most dangerous. And that's the conversation that needs to be had on all levels. When Democrats come and start talking about coming together and aligning together, when they allow 1.7 million people in Florida, mostly black people, to be disenfranchised for life, 2,600 for driving without a license. That's our allies, though. Not until Hillary Clinton was getting her behind kicked did they even start to think about it, right? And those are the issues that we're having. It's not a friendship. Because if you ask some of our liberals, why did you vote for Summer Stefan? There's a list of things, and look at that list. All of it has to do with you niggas cannot monitor yourselves. Tell me it straight, don't play with me.
She said that she didn't show up at the Pro-High debate.
Come on.
And the church that sponsored the debate basically took it on the chin instead of allowing it to be rectified right there. Why isn't she here? They refused to even articulate that.
Right. And so now we have a woman who stood up today and said 11-year-old boy who saw his mother get murdered in front of his eyes. What did this community do when this 11-year-old boy saw his mother shot in the head in front of him, went out and cried and watched her die in the street? At 12 years old, they put him in juvenile hall because he was criminalized instead of having trauma and needing therapy and healing. They sent that boy on the journey he was on. And when they got the weakness they got from that boy, they flipped him They gave him money to buy drugs wired up from other people to put them in jail. They gave him $30,000 to get on the stand and lie about James Carter and leave the murderers on the street so they could get a conviction. And then when he recanted, and he went to his friends and picked up the phone, he has a spit mask on and a rap. And every single policy and procedure you look up tells you never to leave a person unattended like that. In an hour and a half, what happened to him? But no one's accountable. You got this man on there talking about, I can't breathe. They learned nothing. We didn't let them learn anything. From the brother they did that to in New York. I can't breathe. And that's the black power we need to see. They should be afraid to do the things they're doing to us in one way or another. They should be terrified to harm our children in one way or another. And we need to group on that. We need to have points of unity on that. We need to push together on that. We need to identify where can we come in strong and get 500 votes here. Why do they get black men and Mexican men at 18 years of age and give them a felony and take them out of the community to act like capitalism works? To make sure there's no revolution, take all the warriors out the community. And those are the things we need to look at as we seize black power. What's up, Muslim?
And the police,
I'm gonna holler at you.
police aren't scared of us. They got more guns and they're always gonna have more guns. But you know who they're afraid of? Their boss. Who's their boss? Elected officials.
Right.
They're afraid of elected officials.
Right.
That's why they put lots of money to make sure that the elected officials they want to be there are there. Who are the elected officials' bosses?
Mostly the people.
The people who put them there. So if you hire somebody, you hire an employee to do a job, and then all of a sudden you don't care about them, and then you don't ever check in with them, see if they clocking in on time, see if they sweeping up like they supposed to sweep up, see if they cleaning up the messes they supposed to clean up. Whose fault is that? You hired them?
Our fault.
You hired them, you let them be there.
Our fault. And the tactics that we take. A lot of people don't like when people sit on the street and don't let cars go by on the freeway. But that's what people who don't have, it's called tyranny of the majority. And when you know, even if you all get together and you all go vote, you know that their block of voters will always beat yours, there are other tactics, legal tactics, because we don't take legal tactics that people have a right to do. You understand what I'm saying? And that's why we see the things. So we see people do those things that make us uncomfortable, don't down them, because really what they're doing is they're helping us seize power. I don't have the numbers to get you, but I'll make sure you don't go to work. I don't have the numbers to get you, but I'll make sure nobody goes in that courthouse today. I don't have the money to take down a statue, but I will climb on one and take it down and destroy your Confederate piece of crap. And those are other forms that, those tactics are equally important, and they actually build stronger movements. That's how it starts. I always have supreme respect for people on the ground. At all times, even though our ideologies may differ, I have a lot of respect for them.
Let me also just add, so I can say now, I was formerly on the Community Review Board of Police Practices. I was removed. I've also been told that there's, with the new group that the mayor personally selected, there's no black men. I don't know if there's anyone from the 4th District or the 9th District, but I would say that even with my experience there, I wouldn't want to put out in terms of public a positive plug for it. I mean, I can disclose for civilian oversight of all police complaints. We did have access to internal affairs, IA, all their files, we were reviewing the cases. And even though I was a lone voice, like over 20 people, I still think it's a significant role. And I don't want to discount us playing that role, trying to get someone in there, other people. Obviously, if you take a role of being active in the community and you speak at their meetings, you probably end up in the same space as me in terms of being off the board. But again, I wouldn't want that discourage people from trying to do that and get on there. There's the Game Commission, there's others. Even though, again, those spaces can be really conservative and difficult, I think strategically it's important for us, and it's certainly information. I got exposure to all sorts of cases that have been really helpful for us. And I brought it to the community, and hopefully that's part of it. Once you get on there, we don't see you anymore kind of thing, that you come back and you're still active in the community.
The brother over there was talking about all of the police that are on these trolleys and coming out and supporting him because there's a lot of criminalization going on, right? You want to talk a little bit about that? I can talk for you. I ain't got no problem. I got more than that. But do I have permission to talk for you? Okay. No, I can talk. So what you have is the sheriff, probation, the police, right? and they're coming in there sweeping these trolleys. And you also have a lot of people that are being brutalized during these sweeps. You have a lot of Fourth Amendments that are being, pretty much their constitutional rights are being thrown out the door because of these sweeps. And a lot of it has to do with the poverty that's going on and people trying to actually get jobs, go home, and do different things of that nature. So there's one, we need to confront the suppressive mechanisms that are going on at the trolley stop and the police abuse. But the other one is, we need to make sure people that are low income have access to transportation that they can afford, whether it be a free bus pass or not. Now, that's something that we would follow behind Mid-City on, because that's who started that, with the bus passes. And we would amplify that to bring more mobilization in, right? In order to do that. Another issue, well, another thing that we have, I can't give it out now, but it'll be released soon, is we have an app where we can actually, it's a cop watch, cop stop app. And on the cop stop app, if the police do something to you, you take out your phone, you take the information down, you send it, and we get it. We had a brother do that, Hispanic brother do that, got stopped in Lincoln Park. I just want to see how it went, so I called Internal Affairs. Those people called me 5 days in a row. They made and it ended up being the gang suppression unit who pulled him over and took his bus pass. They ended up looking at the whole tape of the stop to see if the bus pass failed. So I don't know the logistics. We need somebody on the inside to tell us why they cared about that call so much. But they cared for some reason. Something's going on. Something's being shaken up there. They had a little bit of fear. So there's some documentation with these laws changing, these transparency laws, and these things getting on their records and coming up in court. They can feel something's happening. People are watching. But they were very afraid. They watched the whole tape. I like wasted hours of somebody's life. I was like, whoa. They really watched that tape. And so things like that are going to make them start changing some of the behavior. They claim, yes.
This stuff doesn't happen in La Jolla.
No.
It doesn't happen in Claremont. It doesn't happen in these neighborhoods. And the reason why is because someone like Layla and then Layla's sister and mom and grandma are going to be on top of them right away because they civically engage.
Right.
Right?
Right. That's true.
We have to engage them. We can't be scared not to engage them and call them on their shit.
We got hands. So our name, what's your name, sir? Robert. Mr. Robert.
I just want to say real quickly it's about being engaged. I was at the city council the other day for a hearing, public safety, little neighborhoods. And I was there for the grand jury report on the community review board because the grand jury slammed the CRB.
Right.
But there's only a few people there for that. There was about 80 or 90 people there for the electric scooters. And it was literally like a crowd of white people over 80.
They're bad.
Complaining about the electric scooters saying they have to go.
And they vote.
And watch how many days quickly before they're gonna outlaw the scooters, because all the city council members like, I've never seen Lori Zaff speak so much and so passionate. She was just up in arms about the scooters and had to be shut down and stopped. Or
That's
just
our
couldn't
community. They
happen.
have all the scooters.
But that's politics 101 in terms of city council, how they respond.
Yes, it is.
It was a packed house for the scooters.
And those are you just did another, understanding the different areas that you can attack. The grand jury is one. So right now we're working on getting all the information to pull the prosecutors' use of informants within the jail system on a grand jury report like they did in Orange County that caused their whole system to kind of fold. Because you have some legal stuff going on there too. You just got to get it. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, okay. Basically, I was actually listening to the gentleman right here in regards to representation on the different boards in the city. And so, one of the ones I do recommend as far as public safety is the Juvenile Justice Task Force. I worked with that someone for a while. But my question for you is, what is this organization or our black organization doing to disarm our old guard? Our seniors that do not respect what they've done to us. I've said among some, I won't say their names, some are alive and some are dead.
Okay.
But I know for a fact some of the things they did.
So I'll say this. So Michael?
Yes, take that one.
I hear like the working through the system and all that other stuff.
Oh, just real quick then. I don't want to ignore his question.
All right, yeah, I ain't gonna answer this question.
Okay.
No.
So for me, I understand clearly that we are where we are today because of the old guard. Love and respect and everything. We wouldn't have the rights that we have today if it wasn't for them. So I appreciate them, I love them, and I'm extremely thankful of them. But I'm not one of those people that are going to sit around and say, how come they're not doing this? And I know this isn't what you're saying also. I'm addressing your question in a different Some people are gonna say, oh, look, the old guard, they're not doing this, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. I'm not interested in that, right? We're gonna do it, right? So for me, the old guard are important to talk to love, to ask to pray for us, to respect and everything like that, and get advice from. Other than that, if you're not on this page, if you're not trying to make your community better, we don't need you. We're gonna keep doing it. We don't need you. We don't, that's okay. No problem. No hurt feelings. Do what you gotta do. Until they become, some people become obstructionists in their methods, right? And anybody that becomes obstructionist needs to be called out. You know, we had people that were going in front of cameras and attacking a black woman who was running for district attorney in order to support a white woman that was the hand-chosen puppet of one of the few people in this world that I would say is evil incarnate. That's Bonnie Jimenez. I don't use that word lightly. That woman is evil. And she chose this person. And now that woman is running for one of the most powerful positions in the county. For the Board of Supervisors. So anybody that gets in the way, one, love and respect our elders as old guard, and as far as I'm concerned, they nothing but good things to say until somebody gets in the way. And then when that happens, then they need to stick by their choices and get called out for it and not be upset when people say, hey, what you're doing is wrong. I just wanted to make sure I answered that before we got to Brother Michael's question.
I'll take your answer, but it wasn't sufficient.
Okay. They don't have to build.
You know what? You know what? Shit is complex. Brother Michael.
One way I think that...
Michael, by the way, is one of the, he came in a little bit late because he's come from something, is one of the co-facilitators of the political education classes.
One way I think we gotta talk about stuff is the political representation in schools, sitting on committees and boards, voting is cool, but I think the thing that makes the vision of reclaiming the community important is the notion of dual and contending power, right? All revolutionary movements, regardless of the tactics that regardless of the strategies that they've done, or tactics that they've used have gone through the strategy of the notion of dual and contending power. What that basically means is you set up your own institutions through which you win the hearts and the minds of the people by doing that. So some of that stuff might be reforms, CRB, things like that. But at the end of the day, you know, you create so that the people believe in you, right? You know, protest is a tactic in creating dual and continuing power, but protest alone isn't the way to do it. Like I said, Phyllis is running things like participatory defense, political education classes, things like that, right? Its own institutions through which the people can be trusted. So yeah, that's what, and I think that's how we knock off the old guard as well, right? Is by doing that. I mean, you know, when you talk about Toussaint Louverture or Vladimir Lenin, right? That's how what began with small groups of people ended up changing the world, you know, through creating dual and continuing power. We look at the movement in the South, what SNCC did, right? SNCC went down there, became and created organic grassroots insurgency, you know, by dual and continuing power. So I think that's what we got to be thinking about as our end goal, as we have all these other tactics that are being used.
And to add on to what Michael was saying, one of the things that I don't want to come across is that the whole point of this talk and the whole point of the classes, the next series of classes, is to be engaged politically, quote unquote politically, to be voting and everything like that. Because one of my biggest concerns is that we get stuck in those routes and don't come up with other ways of attacking the system and other ways of supporting our community, right? So it's not an either or. You gotta do what you gotta do. Why am I talking about voting? Why am I talking about, if any of you have been to a boxing match, especially amateur boxing match, right? Or my kids, they do jujitsu. Everybody on the side, when they see that somebody's dropping their hand, they say, pick up your hand, right? If you see someone not using their right the way they should be using their right, they start yelling, use your right. So when we see our community not using their right to vote, can you dig it? Not using their right, I just came up with that. I had to give myself some props. When you see the community not using the resources that they know how to use, that you can see happening in the fight, you need to start yelling, do it. That's not the only, you don't only have a right hand, right? You gotta use your left. If you gotta, I'm not gonna say you gotta cheat, you're not in favor of cheating, right? If you gotta, we're to MMA. If you gotta use your elbows, use your elbows. You do whatever you can to win the fight, right? And what I've noticed is before I said, I'm not gonna use my right? I'm not gonna vote, that's not important. But what we've noticed is that it does help, that it is important, but it's not our only tool. So we have to recognize it as a tool, but at the same time to be thinking, what are the other tools that we need to be using? One of the things I appreciate most about Layla is thinking in that sense. So when the sheriff said you can't come in, or the warden, whoever it said you can't come in and do it, well shoot, we'll just email every friggin' inmate in the jails and tell them they can do it that way, right? We have to train ourselves not to think in the ways that we've been told to think, in order to create other ways of living, other ways of being a community, other ways of working with one another, and other ways of building Black power, and other ways of building a community that can do what it wants to do for its own people and can prevent other people doing anything to us that we don't want them to do. Michael, your hand was up?
Yeah.
Do you want to come up here?
Please. That's a point though, sir.
Why don't you wrap it up for us? Wrap it up.
I'm all right.
Layla?
I know. It's tagging along, tagging, get stuck.
The
Mr.
nerve.
Macafrano,
Where we gonna be?
Hey, what's up? How's it going?
Well, I'm glad I came. It's been a while. And I know that there's still a lot of stuff that needs to be done. You know, I didn't vote. You know, I just chose not to exercise my right that way. I couldn't find the lesser evil. I just couldn't figure it out, and I didn't do it. But I feel like there's so much more than that. You know, when you talk about Black power, it's, you know, you would think there was Black power because Obama was there because he was Black, right? We had some power, right? We got a Black guy in there. He's going to help the community life. Things are going to be better and different. And that didn't happen. You know, it's green power. You know what I mean? Green power is what we need in our communities because without no money, you can't get nothing done. Okay, so you got to have some money. You got to somehow, some way create an economy within ourselves and our communities to make money, right? Money gives us more time to do the things that we need to do, right? In our communities, we got 2-3 jobs trying to make ends meet. I ain't got time for that. I can't go. I want to go, I just can't. My boss is on my ass. If I quit, if I go, I'm gonna get fired and my kids aren't gonna eat. Right. And then we got the other side that's like, you know what? I'm gonna sling, I'm gonna sell dope, I'm gonna do whatever I gotta do to grind, get my money. So those are some of the issues that I was concerned about as far as bringing up, that those are the issues that impacted my community as well. You know, December 5th, 1990, I decided I'm not turning back, right? I've lived a pretty rough life, decided I'm not going back that route because that's not gonna work. And in that process, I've gone through a lot of different experiences. I've worked for nonprofit organizations, I've worked for the San Diego Superior Court, and now I'm self-employed.
That's right.
Because I don't want to go back to waiting for them to argue for money to see if I'm going to keep my job.
That's right.
So those are some of the issues that I feel that we need to also throw in there to bring out power, you know, in our communities.
I think that's another conversation.
I met with a black banker, this is years ago. And, you know, I'm like, this dude's a banker, you know, whatever. Maybe he'll pay for dinner or lunch or something like that. But then he said something that has changed my way of thinking when it comes to what you're saying. He said, you can never be free in a capitalist system without capital. And if you look at our court systems, that's true. If you look at living here, that's true. Those are all really important things. But it's also like your Obama analogy. Because if you look at politics, right, Obama is wealthy, but he's not the richest person in the world, right? And he was president of the United States. It didn't change anything. We also got rich black people with lots of wealth. And brown people with lots of wealth. And that's also not it. So the question is getting our politicians, but also getting our people, one, getting the right people to have the money, but getting the people that have money, the right people to have money, and getting the right people to be in those offices and continuing to think through it. But, I mean, one of our classes probably should be about money and civic engagement, right? Because we live in a country that said money has more rights than an individual. So we only have 2 more minutes. I'm gonna let Darwin say something and then we'll close it out because although we start late, we always end on time.
I was just gonna real quickly add, just based on my experience living in DC, one of the things they talk about openly, because it's not known outside typically of DC, is that Marion Barry, the black mayor, his real claim to fame is he created more black billionaires than anyone else, more black millionaires. So for example, there's a story of BET. He's the one that gave the land grant to start BET. So there's a whole connection between politics and the economics if you have the right mindset. And a class like that would be helpful as a start because it's true, you can create black millionaires that don't give anything back to the community, or you can do one that help uplift the community. But in general, if you want any financial stuff, you've got to go through the politicians to get there. So how to navigate that and how we support each other for those that work in the political realm, the economic realm, is really critical for our success.
With that being said,
and I'm not disagreeing with anything that anybody's saying about in terms of capital, but I do want to make a distinction between money and
Good, because if you were disagreeing, we would have to ask you to, no.
that money and capital are not necessarily the same thing. What's that?
I'm saying your point is important.
Yeah, money and capital are not the same thing necessarily. I mean, this building is a form of capital.
Yeah, no, exactly. Under capitalism, actual value is in people's labor.
Exactly.
So the thing about organizing is in organizing people's labor against the material wealth of the ruling class.
Sure.
Billionaires, like I said, the sharecroppers brought down Jim Crow.
yes.
And they didn't do it just by billionaires. Those people fought against King, they fought against SNCC, right? In their own class interests, because they didn't want Jim Crow to go there. So I'm just going aside with you that organize the...
You all telling me to make this
Well,
bullshit?
we can organize the...
I'm not saying don't get money. I'm saying, but having people on the street is also a form of capital that can create change. I mean, it wasn't necessarily capital that kept Aaron Harvey out of prison. It was masses of people on the
Meaning
street.
financial capital?
Well, yes, it wasn't necessarily money that kept Aaron Harvey out of prison. It was masses of people on the street, a form of human capital, people power. So this institution is a form of capital. The folks that are in here are a form of capital. In addition to money, which is important too.
Which pays for the light. I'm just saying.
I'm not, like I said, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you.
No, it's true. It's true. It's definitely, I don't even think it's the most important or close or anything like that. And like you said, shit is complex. Any last word?
No.
Layla?
You guys did
Larry?
very well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming. So listen, and you just got backwards. I'm all good with that for class. Every Friday we're going to be having a series like that. The brother who was going to be coming today wasn't able to come. Next Friday we have somebody else that's going to be coming. So every Friday somebody different is going to be coming in talking about the important things. So please come. Please tell your friends. And that's it. Remember, shit is complex.
Shit is complex.
All right. That was